welcome to another Red Eyes radio program. My name is Henrik Palmgren, and we extend a warm welcome to everyone listening from around the world in these strange and interesting times. And it seems to get stranger every day now, doesn't it? What is going on beneath the Giza plateau in Egypt? News have been coming out of underground cave systems that have been uncovered. There's also been rumors and stories about the secret archaeological excavations allegedly taking place in the vicinity of the Sphinx. Objects are rumored to have been taken out, and a lot of speculation is going on around the web about this, obviously. So what is the truth? What is the story on this? We are going to begin to talk about the discovery of Giza's cave system, their natural cave system. This is Egypt's Duat, the real underworld that exists underneath the pyramids. Andrew Collins is with us, the man who in modern times has rediscovered these. And we are going to hear the story of how he found the entrance to this natural cave system at the Tomb of the Birds, located at the plateau's north cliff, not too far away from the Sphinx. Where did the story begin? Who discovered them first? How has Sahi Hawass of the Supreme Council of Antiquities dealt with the story? This is an explosive discovery that could rewrite the whole story of Egypt, and especially how their own myths came about in terms of their underworld, the Duat. In our second hour, we will focus more on the stories and rumors about the secret excavations taking place there. Andrew Collins is the author of The Cygnus Mystery. He was with us back in 2007 discussing this book. He's also authored From the Ashes of Angels, Gateway to Atlantis, Gods of Eden, Tutankhamun, The Exodus Conspiracy, and many more books. His latest one that details what we'll be talking about today is called Beneath the Pyramids, and the website is andrewcollins.com. So stay with us as we explore this very exciting discovery with Andrew Collins. Okay, well, Andrew, we have so much to talk about. Obviously, you have a new book out, and we'll get into that more later on as well. But there is some urgent matters here in terms of some of the big discoveries here that you've been revealing in terms of what is happening with the Giza, with the caves there. There has been talks about digs underneath, and we have a whole story here to kind of unfold, if you will, for our listeners. But why don't you kick things off for us, Andrew, and tell us about some of these discoveries that you've made here recently?
Okay, well, for the last 25 years, I've been engaged in a search for what most people call the Hall of Records. And this is some kind of secret chamber existing beneath the pyramids of Giza, beneath the plateau there. And this is something which obviously psychics have talked about. Edgar Casey and others have predicted that this would be discovered and it would be found, sometime during our lifetimes. And it was something that I was pursuing. And in 2007, we got a very lucky break. A colleague of mine by the name of Nigel Skinner-Simpson, who is an Egyptological researcher, managed to track down the memoirs of a British diplomat and explorer by the name of Henry Salt. They had been in the British Museum for over 100 years, and their importance had never been recognised. Now, he knew this name, Henry Salt, because in a biography of Salt, there is just one or two lines that talk about him exploring catacombs at Giza, somewhere to the west of the Great Pyramids. Mm-hmm. Now, there was absolutely nothing recorded about this, so it was always something that he wanted to know more. When he finally tracked down the memoirs, unpublished I should say, they weren't published until 2007 for the first time, it actually gives more details about these catacombs, and it says that he and an Italian explorer by the name of Giovanni Caviglia travelled through these catacombs for a distance of several hundred yards until they came upon a large chamber that interconnected with another three. And it said that at this point Salt gave up because he could not find any treasure or gold down there, leaving Caviglia to continue on for another 300 feet further. And this is quite important to emphasise, it says further. Mm-hmm. So it I mean, there's no ambiguity here. They travelled several hundred yards, and at this point, Salt gave up and left Caviglia to carry on. And of course, with this was obviously the question of where was the entrance to this. Well, Henry Salt talks about it in an area of a hand-drawn map of the plateau that he did as Area QQ, and we were able to track this down specifically to an area that's about 500 metres west of the Great Pyramids, within the northern cliff of the plateau, somewhere that hardly anybody ever goes, not just tourists, but Egyptologists, security police. It's somewhere that's just left on its own from one year to the next. And here is a tomb which also is completely a mystery. Nothing at all is known about it, other than the fact that around 150 years ago, another British explorer by the name of Richard Howard Vyse, with an engineer by the name of John Shea Perrin, were in this tomb, and they discovered the remains of bird mummies and possibly some other animal mummies as well, and suggesting that the site was being used for some kind of cult to do with a bird god maybe. And I found this really interesting because there was a bird god by the name of Sokar,
yes,
who was the guardian of the underworld at Giza, which went under the name of Rostau. This was the ancient name, not just of the cave underworld in Egyptian mythology, but it was also the ancient name of Giza itself. And I've proposed in books that the two were the same, and that this cave underworld truly existed at Giza. So I wondered whether this cave was the entrance, this tomb was the entrance. And I'd actually gone there in January 2007, before the memoirs were found, looking for any possible entrances into caves, and I couldn't find any at the time. But once the memoirs were found, and this was months after we'd returned from Egypt, I realised that maybe we had missed something. So at this point, we basically gathered together an expedition, and we also got funding from the American organisation, the Edgar Cayce Foundation, who were very interested in following up these new leads. And we returned back to Giza in March 2008, and we explored the tomb again, which is quite substantial, and it's obviously in total darkness as well. And eventually we found a small crack in the wall, which we hadn't noticed on the first visit, and this led into a huge cave chamber that was filled with bats. And all these bats started, flying out of this hole. But I realised that we needed to explore further. So we entered inside this cave complex and began exploring it for the first of 4 visits, 2 in March 2008 and 2 in April 2008, each time penetrating further and further into the bedrock. And by the end of it, we'd actually managed to get a distance of around 100 metres, but the place was extremely dangerous. It's a natural cave system. There are lots of pits and places where you can fall down and obviously damage yourself, plus it's full of bats, plus there are also poisonous spiders here. There are camel spiders, there are also white widow spiders that were recognised down here, and we realised eventually that the more we went in there, the more we'd have to cover up, because if we were bitten by any of these spiders, we'd be in serious trouble. Because the nearest hospital was several miles from there, and it would take so long to reach it that, could obviously be fatal. Now, the actual caves themselves existed clearly before the Pyramid Age. They've been there for tens of thousands of years, if not longer.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that there is a possibility that they may have influenced the foundation of the Giza Plateau as a pyramid field during the Old Kingdom period, which was obviously around 4,500 years ago. And this is good evidence, I think, to show that Giza had interest and may well have been seen as sacred even before the time of Khufu and Khafre and Menkaure, the builders of the pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
And that maybe there's also a relationship with the Sphinx, which many obviously believe is far older than the pyramids themselves. So there may well have been some kind of sacred enclosure, some kind of veneration, of the caves, of which the Sphinx itself was some kind of guardian, because it was said that a lion was the guardian into the entrance of the cave underworld in Egyptian mythology.
Yeah.
So the whole thing ties together. There are no hieroglyphs in these caves at all. What there are is very, very faded images in red, which may be natural, but there's also a possibility that some of them could be very faded rock art. And this is where we start getting into very interesting territory, because quite clearly we're dealing with a place which not only predates the Pyramid Age, but may even predate the Egyptian civilization as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore it's important to look at these caves from a much wider perspective than simply Egypt, from a more African perspective, and to perhaps look beyond the boundaries of Egypt itself for clues as to its symbolism and its purpose, and the role that it may have had even before the time of the pyramids.
Well, I guess what we can say as well, Andrew, is that this is obviously very much connected with Egyptian mythology. The stories about the underworld of the soul, the duat, and that this is what we might be talking about here is a physical place for this. It might actually have been
Absolutely.
this that spawned the mythological stories about these things, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the actual ancient name of Giza, which is Rostau, means the mouth of the passages, which is a clear indication that Giza was seen as the entrance into a cave underworld. And in the ancient books of the dead from Egypt, it talks about Rostau in this capacity, and it describes in detail the routes that the soul of the deceased takes on their journey through the afterlife, so that they can be eventually reborn on the eastern horizon, symbolically like the sun, where they would then rise up into the sky and become at one with the stars that exist within the northern domain, the so-called circumpolar stars, or certainly the stars that are seen each night in the northern sky. The Milky Way was a big key here, but what we've found is that there certainly seems to be stars associated with the plateau. However, our research is a little bit more controversial than, let's say, the work of Robert Bouval, Orion Mystery, because it would seem that the Orion connections may be actually quite late in on the day, that there were earlier stars that were significant to Giza, and these would appear to be those of the so-called Northern Cross, or Cygnus, the celestial swan or bird, which is seen in the northern heavens, and is prominently positioned upon the Milky Way, at the position where the Milky Way breaks in two to form like two streams, which are known as the Dark Rift or the Cygnus Rift. This was seen universally as a place of birth and rebirth of some kind of cosmic mother, or cow mother, as she was known in Egypt, where she went under two names: Nuit, who was like the god of the night, god of the night sky, who was shown arched over the earth, and also she was known under the name Hathor, which basically means the house of Horus. When we say house, we mean basically the womb of Horus. She was the bearer, the mother of the god Horus in his older form, as the god who's shown as this hawk or falcon. And basically what these goddesses, these cow mothers or cosmic mothers, do is to symbolically give birth to the sun. This is done both on a daily basis on the eastern horizon, but it's also symbolically done once a year at the time of the solstices. I think initially it was the winter solstice that was important, and because of certain changes in other calendars that were working in sync, I think eventually this changed to the summer solstice. However, all of this is a backdrop to trying to understand the greater purposes of the caves at Giza. For instance, the female patron goddess of Giza is definitely Hathor. It is said, for instance, that she haunts a grove of sycamore trees just to the south of the Sphinx, where we uncovered a holy well that is also said to be another entrance into the cave underworld at Giza.
Yeah.
It is said that that she lives off the blood of the dead by picking the crimson red fruit that come from the sycamore, and this is not the European sycamore, this is the sycamore fig tree. And she picks the fruit from it, and she eats this, and this is like her eating of the dead. This is a modern Arab-Egyptian tale that obviously contains some kind of symbolism that goes back to the time of the pharaohs. It is also said that women who wanted to conceive a child would go to this same grove, and they would there eat of the fruit of the sycamore figs and gain the blessing of Hathor to be able to do this. And this shows Hathor's connection with the idea of birth and rebirth, actually at Giza, which was obviously the cult connected with the soul of the deceased. He or she would be within the cave underworld, and here they would have to undergo a series of trials and tribulations in this underworld realm, which was actually known as the Duat. And once this had been achieved, and it also meant, encountering snakes, serpents, things like that, that they were able to be released, as I say, on the eastern horizon and be rebirthed like the sun. So in other words, they would come from the womb of Hathor, or in other traditions, the womb of Nuit, and be reborn and be free spirits that could rise up and become at one with the stars, those northern stars, the very stars associated with the original birth, not just of the pharaoh, but also of life as a whole, because it was believed that the same area of the sky on the Milky Way was the point of creation of the physical world, and that this was symbolically enacted on the ground by creating almost like a centre of the world. The Greeks used to refer to it as the omphalos, which means the navel, the belly of the world. And of course, in this belly is the seed, or the egg, or the babe that is produced and gives life. And that life, as I said, is not just an individual life, but life collectively, and the life of the planet, the life of the physical world.
Yeah.
And I believe that Giza represented this. It represented a point of first creation. This is what the secret chamber is. at Giza. It's a womb, it's a tomb of God, but it's also a place of creation, a place of first creation. And what did they say was contained within this place of creation, but some kind of stone, like you have in the underground temples of Egypt, the so-called lingam stones, which represent this point of creation in the world, that still radiate the concept of creation into the outside world simply by, continuing to exist. And this is what I believe is actually to be found at Giza, some kind of stone or crystal that represents the point of first creation. This, I believe, is what's inside that secret chamber. Whether it's still there now or not, I don't know. But I think originally there was some kind of crystal, and that it was there. I say crystal, and the reason I say that is because when we gained access into the caves for the first time, a local tomb guardian came across, and we talked to him. And we said to him, "Do you know about the caves?" And he said that, yeah, he was aware of them. He said they go for, many miles. We said, "Have you ever been in them?" He said, "No." He said, "I would never go in them because they are haunted by a giant snake called El Hanash. And if you went into them, El Hanash would strangle you to death." And this was enough of a fear to stop him from ever going in there. Now, this was the first time I'd heard the name El Hanash. I've read hundreds of books on Giza and the pyramids and the Sphinx, and this is the first time I'd ever come across this. What I did know is that in Roman times, it was believed that a demiurge, a creator of the world by the name of Agatho-daimon, which means the good spirit, a deity in the form of a snake, was said to sleep, repose or rest beneath the plateau. That was definitely known. Plus, of course, obviously the Egyptian cave underworld has its own snakes. Sometimes, for instance, the soul of the deceased, it has to navigate a snake within the world, actually going through its body, which is obviously obvious symbolism of passing through a cave where you could actually sort of see the ribbing, of the cave walls representing like the skeleton of the actual snake itself. So snakes were very strongly associated with caves in ancient Egypt. But here was an Arab-Egyptian legend or tradition that had somehow made its way into the modern day, completely unrecorded. And by chance, 1 month later, I spoke to another member of the local community. This one who did actually have contact with sort of New Age people and whatever, but related another legend to do with El Hanash and the so-called Hall of Records, which stunned me. He said that what has been passed down to him was the fact that El Hanash inhabited the cave underworld at Giza, and that in the heart of it was what he called the Hall of Records, and that many people would try to reach this Hall of Records, which contained a great crystal or diamond that was held in the mouth of this great snake, El Hanash. And it was said that anybody that came in sight of this snake would be blinded. But one day somebody would come when the end times came, and they would enter into the Hall of Records, and they would be blinded only in one eye. And when this happened, they would then gain the secrets and the power of this crystal or diamond, and good things would happen to them, basically. In other words, somebody would eventually achieve, the knowledge and wisdom that was obviously held within this. And I thought this was an incredible story. On its own, it's just another fable. But the fact that we quite independently come across an Arab Egyptian who actually couldn't speak any English and had no contact with New Age people. He was at a part of the plateau and he lived there in a tent and never really came into contact with tourists, and certainly would never be talking about this type of story. Confirmed that El Hanash, was haunting this cave, which he was frightened to go into, a story which presumably he'd never told anybody about. The reason being is that we have not found one person who has actually been in these caves prior to us.
Really? That's amazing.
Because...
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, because of the publicity which we have generated in respect to the caves themselves, people have obviously since been down there and they're telling their own stories now. However, we were the first people down those caves, and we have not found any. And to be honest, I find this absolutely amazing that we've not been able to, to come across anybody else, any Egyptologists, anybody on the plateau, or any local people that have known anything about either the tomb or the caves themselves. It's absolutely remarkable.
It is. It's incredible. Just to clarify this thing again, then, for our listeners here, we're not now talking about the chamber directly under. There is a cavity, if I can put it that way, directly under the Great Pyramid, right? No. But this is not it.
Oh, no. I mean, and also I think it's important to emphasise that that's not natural. Although it's obviously cut into the natural bedrock, the subterranean chamber, as it's known, is actually hewn by human tools. What we're in are natural caves that penetrate beneath the limestone bedrock for a distance of at least 15, 20 metres, maybe more. And they actually enter rock which is not the same as that on the surface. There is red powder oozing from the walls, which is almost certainly a form of iron oxide, which was known in the ancient world as ochre, red ochre. Red ochre was a very, very sacred powder used for painting across Africa and in other parts of the world, going all the way back to Paleolithic times, tens of thousands of years before the age of the pharaohs. In fact, some of the oldest pieces of objects with like decorative designs and things like that were actually been made of pieces of ochre stone. But here, underneath the plateau, it oozes from the walls. Red ochre was also sacred to the goddess Hathor, and almost certainly represents her lifeblood within her womb and within her vulva, which is another indication that these caves somehow represent the womb and birth tube of this cow mother under whatever name she was originally called. And that these places were places of birth, places of rebirth, and that, that the memories and the ideas that we have of the Hall of Records may be based on this. I'm not saying that there isn't chambers down there, because clearly there are, and I do believe that they are constructed by human hands, and that they will be found. The other important thing to point out is that we now have pretty firm evidence that these caves continue for several hundred metres and go beneath the second pyramid. Not the first pyramid, the Great Pyramid, the second pyramid. That's the one in the middle of the three. And this is really, really interesting because this information comes from a modern radar satellite image that is known to be able to penetrate and show features beneath the Earth itself. In fact, similar technology is, for instance, being used by the US military to try and find the cave bunkers that are being used by Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan / Pakistan. They're using similar radar frequencies to be able to look under the earth. Well, we have an image that was taken in 2007 that clearly shows that that the caves that we entered, you can see where they are actually on this map. You can see how far we got and everything. But you can then see that they continue on. They turn left, i.e. towards the east, and then gradually curve around and are lost from sight as they enter beneath the second pyramid. And the second pyramid in Roman times was believed to be the resting place of Hermes Trismegistus. He was the founder of ancient wisdom in Egypt, based originally upon the god of writing, the god of the Hall of Records, whose name was Thoth. So in other words, this was a later Roman, and recorded by Arab writers. The idea that the second pyramid was arguably more important than the first one. In fact, a lot has been written to suggest that the second pyramid may have even been built first and was actually constructed on the foundations of a much earlier building of some description. Maybe, some kind of square platform or something like this.
Yeah.
And I mean, in fact, I've written about this myself in earlier books. So somehow, suddenly, we come to a focus of the second pyramid, which is built at the highest point in the plateau, the most obvious place for any kind of monument that would be constructed in that area. And to know that the caves go directly beneath this strongly suggests that there was once another entrance that went from the area of the second pyramid into the caves themselves. And this is one of the lines of inquiries that we're working on now.
Ah, wow, it's amazing here. And there's so much I want to ask you, obviously, here, but let's backtrack a little bit. I want to talk about some of the Edfu texts as well, because they correlate some of this information that you mentioned here in terms of also the underworld, but also who the ancient Egyptians then maybe believe are behind this or were inhabiting these caves. We can talk about the eldest of the eldest ones, the primeval ones, right?
Yeah. Well, we call them the elders, just to make it easy. But what the Edfu building texts are creation texts. Probably every temple would have had these foundation texts or creation texts originally. And the reason why the ones at Edfu are so important is that they're the most complete. And they were also constructed from a number of ancient texts which are no longer extant. They're no longer around today. And it names what these texts are, and it cites what they actually said. So it's a little bit like a sort of, a book constructed from older books, and it says this. And this is the story that it actually paints. It says that basically at the beginning of the world, an island grew from a sacred egg or within the primeval waters. Now this part is something that's quite common to creation myths in Egypt anyway. And it said that upon this island, which was known as the Island of the Egg, it was also known as the Island of the Flame and various other names as well, the first ever sacred enclosure was constructed. The first ever building structure was placed upon it. And it became like a shrine to some kind of creator god that was originally a snake, but later transformed into a bird, seemingly a falcon. And it was said that this snake god was venerated here, and that he was responsible for creating, the world, and that there were divine beings that tended over this shrine. They became known as the primeval ones, the eldest ones, or the elders, as we like to call them, and that they remained here. But then suddenly something really bad happened. There was a period of darkness, and an enemy snake appeared in the sky, the waters rose up, reclaimed the island, which, by the way, seems to be a reference to an island within the Nile itself. Or certainly maybe a lake that's connected with the River Nile. And the people, the inhabitants of the island, and presumably thereabouts as well, these mythical beings, were all drowned. And thereafter, new beings came along that venerated the older ones now as ghosts. In other words, they were dead,
right?
And that they were now venerated as the honourable founders of this shrine, which was rebuilt. And then the first temple was constructed, and the measurements and the geometry of this first temple became the blueprint of all other temples in Egypt. This is the reason why this story is told. But there are other specific information given with this that are really crucial to this, because it is said that in this island was something called the Place of the Well, which seems to be some kind of stairwell leading down into an underground structure known as the underworld of the soul, the Duatem Bar, the underworld of the soul. And of course, obviously, you've got the same word here, underworld, Duat, as is found in other ancient Egyptian funerary texts. And it said that these elders would descend into the underworld of the soul, and they would use these relics or power objects, so in other words what we'd call sort of sacred objects or something like this, to carry out magical acts of creation in the outside world. And this included them pushing back the waters after the first time of chaos, which I see as some kind of natural catastrophe. And some of the Egyptian writers that have taken time to examine the Edfu building texts, of which there are hardly any, to be honest, but those that have suggest that this might be talking about some kind of natural catastrophe, involving the Nile, involving some kind of time frame before the rise of dynastic or pharaonic Egypt.
Yeah.
I think that these power objects were some kind of crystal, but the centre of this underworld of the soul was an object known as the Bennett, which is a word that means seed or embryo. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is identical to what I was referring to earlier on, which is this omphalos or lingam stone, this stone of creation. I think that this is another memory of this secret chamber, if you like, this hall of records, or as we like to refer to it these days, the crystal chambers. That's what we actually refer to this complex as. Mm-hmm. It might sound like a very new age term, but when you start weighing up all the evidence, it does look like we're looking at something quite extraordinary down there.
Could this be, again, the story seems to imply that they wanted to preserve some kind of teaching or knowledge from the antediluvian world, the pre-catastrophe, and this might be one of the sites then where something of this nature were stored. And this
absolutely.
Could very well be in the form of a crystal optical technology, if you will, right?
I think it's probably more than that. I don't even think it's optical. I think that it's it may just be the remnant of some kind of high culture, high technology that existed before the end of the last ice age. I say this because we're amongst friends here. Clearly I haven't got anything to back this up other than my own intuition, what I can pick from the evidence here. Because, clearly these caves were around at the end of the last ice age. And if there is a possibility that the manufactured areas of them, any chambers, were done before the Pyramid Age, then quite clearly this could go back all the way. This could be. My hunch is that we are dealing with something that was going on in Egypt at the end of the last ice age, around 11,000 BC. And I suggest that there was activity going on in this area. Plato gives this exact time frame, basically, for activity going on in Egypt. And of course, obviously, this sort of echoes in the works that he did relating to Atlantis, of course. I'm not saying there's a direct link there, but and certain ancient writers talk about the same time frame as some kind of catastrophe or something, or the beginning of some kind of era or aeon or age or something like this, before the current one. And
I mean, just to quickly also emphasize this point, or remind people who are listening as well. We talked about this on a previous show, but some of the oldest art that has been found in Egypt is believed to be around 15,000 years old, and actually has more similarities to some of the Neolithic, cave painting art. Of again, this symbol of the cow obviously is very prominent here as well. So that shows, just as you say, Andrew, that indeed there has been activity there for a long, long time.
Absolutely, and as I said, to start understanding the caves that have been discovered so far, I think it's almost important to look outside of Egypt, or certainly outside of dynastic Egypt, and yes, to start looking at the symbolism of the painted caves in southern Egypt, for instance, and in other parts of Central Africa, and even to start looking towards the beliefs of cultures who may have some remnant of complicated wisdom and knowledge traditions that go back 10, maybe even 15,000 years. And the one people that I do believe that we should be looking very, very closely at is the Dogon of Mali. The reason I say that, not only because of the work of people like Robert Temple in the Sirius Mystery, but the work of Laird Scranton in his book, The Science of the Dogon, shows clear overlaps between the most sacred ancient wisdom of the Egyptians, and that found within the oral traditions of the Dogon of Mali, but also just recently, within the past 5 years, the oldest pottery in Africa was discovered at the very same location where the Dogon lived today, and in the Bendagari Hills, of Mali. There have been archaeological work going on, and they date basically back to 11 to 12,000 years ago. So again, this is right at the end of the last ice age, and is contemporary with the rise of the first, agricultural communities of the Near East, which is something else that I've studied very closely, to do with the origins of Eden in southeast Turkey, the oldest temple of the world, Göbekli Tepe, which is near the city of Urfa in southeast Turkey. These are other areas of study that I'm working on. But remaining in Africa, my hunch says to me that we should be looking at people like the Dogon for some clues as to what the true symbolism and wisdom of the caves is in Giza.
Well, that's very interesting. We've had, as you might know, and we've had both Laird with us here recently, and we've also actually interviewed the main archaeologist at Göbekli Tepe, Klaus Schmidt. So this is very timely, so to speak, obviously. But even so, if we talk about the word Göbekli Tepe, I was actually reminded of that, since this southern hill. Let me see if I can find that now in my notes here. Actually, even word-wise, today have a similar name. Maybe you can even remind me of that as we speak here. Let's see if I can find that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I can take it from here.
Gebel Gibli, that's what it's called, right?
Yeah. Gebel Gibli is the modern Arab name for a very prominent hill just to the south of the Sphinx. It's a few hundred metres to the south of the Sphinx. Now, some people call this the fourth pyramid. It's so prominent. And what we've discovered is that almost certainly it was the foundation point for the creation of the pyramid field at Egypt. It was the original survey point. And quite recently, the American Egyptologist and archaeologist Mark Lerner did a survey of the whole plateau again. And he began that survey by going up onto Jebel Gibli and doing this. However, we've looked into the origins of this hill and have found that it actually bears much older names. It wasn't just known as the Southern Hill, because obviously that really just refers to the fact that it's to the south of the plateau. It was originally known as Tafaya, a word which I was told specifically means the place of the beginning, or the first place, i.e. the place where things began. And if this doesn't just mean it's like the entrance point onto the plateau, then I think it has much more sacred connotations. The site is also called El Hadaba, which basically means the high place, and that also has sacred connotations. For instance, there's a place with a similar name in Petra in Jordan, and this is a place that I have proposed in books, was the original Mount Sinai, because the actual true traditions to with Moses are probably much more to be connected with the area of Petra on the borders between Jordan and Palestine, Israel, than they are with the area of the modern peninsula of Sinai, believe it or not. But anyway, that's a different story. But this southern hill, Jebel Gibli, Tafaya, Al Hadba, all of these seem to indicate that this was the original point of survey. And there is a stela, a text carved in granite that lies between the two paws of the Great Sphinx at Giza.
Right, yeah.
That was actually erected by the pharaoh Thutmose IV, and it recalls how he basically cleared away the sand from around the Sphinx, and the Sphinx said to him, look, if you clear away this sand, I'll make you king, and he did become king, and this is the story that's given on that stela. But there are certain statements within this stela which are crucial, and it refers to that basically, the place of the first time, and the context in which it's talking about. It's a location somewhere in the vicinity of the Sphinx, and I'm dead certain that it's talking about Jebel Gibli. The way it's said, the context it's said, almost certainly it relates to Jebel Gibli, just to the south of the Sphinx. It's no coincidence that the Sphinx is the head of the Sphinx is due north of the summit of Jebel Gibli. Right. I mean, perfectly due north.
Yeah. So it seems to be at this point, if we look at it, it's like what has been used is probably then natural landmarks or mounds, or do you think that this might be constructed as well? Actually, what's your take on that?
What, Jebel Gibli?
Yeah.
Now that's a natural mound, no questions about that at all.
Natural mound.
But what's interesting is that at the base of it is this holy well, which I mentioned earlier on.
Yes. Which
is said to be another entrance into the cave underworld. And I think there is a possibility that the Edfu building texts are actually referring to this well. I mean, it clearly refers to a well. There doesn't seem to be any doubt about that. And I think an argument can be made to suggest that both Jebel Gibli and the well are actually featured within the actual texts of the Edfu Foundation records. Because the other thing to point out, which is important, is that you would say, well, hold on, Edfu's in southern Egypt. How is all this relating to Giza? Well, it says that specifically that the mythical location of, the foundation point of the world, where this island rose up out of the water, was north of the city of Memphis. Memphis is immediately due south of Giza, and I'm pretty certain that this was the general locality that was being referred to in the Edfu building texts.
Now, do you think that this also could have been a literal story, that it might actually have been a flood, and this was among, at least in this region, was the first area that actually was habitable in some way? Could that
Yes,
be the
absolutely.
case?
Yeah. I mean, we certainly know that there were advanced communities, high culture amongst the very late sort of Paleolithic peoples in southern Egypt and northern Sudan. And these people were extremely advanced. They were living in communities which were not seen again until the Mesolithic era of Europe and the Near East. So many thousands of years later, and they were there from between around 15,000 to around 10 to 11,000 BC. They had very advanced microblade technology. In other words, the flints were beautifully carved and had specific functions. We also know that they were almost certainly experimenting with the domestication of wild plants and cereals for use of for creation of things like bread, probably, and maybe even beer, which is something which does not recur again until many thousands of years later, when it turns up in the Near East, the very area of Göbekli Tepe. And I have proposed in Beneath the Pyramids, which is, to say, the latest book to pull all this together, and obviously describes the entire discovery of the caves. I basically said that the people that were in the area of Egypt at the end of the last ice age, when some kind of cataclysm or catastrophe struck, probably other parts of the world more so than in Egypt, and almost certainly involved a comet impact, that the people left Egypt and probably journeyed into the area we now know as northern Iraq, northern Syria, southeast Turkey. It's an area that we know from biblical traditions as Eden. Eden was an original location. It's not just a mythical place. There was a kingdom of Eden referred to in the Bible on at least a couple of occasions, and it's mentioned in the same breath as other places we know existed in the same general region of the globe. So we can be pretty certain that Eden did exist. And I have written that whoever was in Egypt left it at this time and set up shop probably on the Euphrates River, and that these people were the instigators of the foundation of religion, of civilization in this area. They brought with them their skills out of Africa, I think, and the descriptions of them are quite specific. They're virtually albinos. Now, they're described as extremely tall, long hair, which is white, their skin white but rudded, and their faces like serpents, like vipers, and this sounds very odd, sounds almost alien. But if you think about a lot of albino people, particularly in Central Africa, where the albino has been seen as almost like the inherent shaman, albino children were taken away virtually at the point of birth, and initiated into priesthood. Sometimes they would be taken into caves, and they would spend their early childhood just inside caves, to prepare them, for their duties as a shaman or a priest. They had special faculties, and they certainly were the ones that would have taken control of communities. I believe that some of these sorts of guys ended up controlling the very rise of the first agricultural settled sedentary communities in the Near East around 11,000 BC at places like Göbekli Tepe.
Wow, amazing story, Andrew. I definitely want to continue talking more here with you in our second hour for our members here in a while. I want to take a short break as well, but this is so much exciting material, obviously, and just tell us where we can go then to pick up a copy of your latest book, Beneath the Pyramids.
Beneath the Pyramids is available now from Amazon, or there's signed copies, obviously, on my own website, which is andrewcollins.com. Obviously, I welcome any kind of debate on andrewcollins.com, or, press the link to go to Facebook as well. I'm on Facebook and update all this. Perhaps, obviously, we can talk about all the conspiracies that have arisen from the discovery of the caves, because that's obviously where it's going now. And obviously that's what's being discussed on Facebook a lot.
All right, very good. andrewcollins.com. Head on over there and check it out. This is a very exciting book and a very exciting material that we're discussing, and we will continue talking more about the caves and all the rest, as it were, Andrew, in our next hour. So stay with us, and we'll be right back with more.
I am a sparkle in the rain. I am a venture and the sword in the stone. The angel who guards me has no name. Come share my sensation when I fall down from the sky. I won't be in between anymore. I feel the vibration. I must come down, 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 down with my gift of delight. So take me ashore, take me ashore with a kiss, angel of bliss. I need the body and the soul to sing. Just put me down as a king, for I must open the door to the fairy tale. I must open the door to the fairy tale. Let's set sail. I see something green and blue now. My seashell is full of dreams, and I don't exist, but still I'm with you. And I won't be in between she gave us was full of defeat. Our love is the key to the eternal sea. So let me be the fruit that plays the forest, and let me come inside your heart again. Yeah, let me drink your golden cup of poison. me into your game. I'm your flame. Come share my gift of delight. Come share my gift of delight. Come share my gift. So take me ashore, take me ashore with the king's angel of bliss. I need the body and the soul to sing. Just put me down as a king, for I must open the door to the fairy tale. I must open the door to the fairy tale. I must open the door to the fairy tale. Set sail.
We begin the second hour for our members to discuss the entrance to the cave system at the North Cliff, the Tomb of the Birds. Andrew actually met with Sai Hawass to tell them about the caves, to give them this discovery. Andrew shares with us this story and how Hawass dealt with it. Hawass has denied the existence of the caves in the media since this time, but the Supreme Council of Antiquities in Egypt have decided to close off the entrance to the Tomb of the Birds. So if nothing's there, what are they protecting, and why are they preventing people from accessing the caves? Are they working on it themselves? What is to be found in Egypt's real underworld? We connect this story with the rumors that have been going around about the secret excavations at the Giza Plateau, Atlantean objects that have been found and removed, and all kinds of sensational rumors, things that of course explode on the web. Get the story from Andrew's perspective, who actually is down there himself and who has a lot of contacts that continuously visit these sites. We talk about the underground galleries, the catacombs, Thoth Hermes, snake symbolism, the dragon myth, and the story of El Hanash, about the giant snake living in the natural cave system. Andrew shares a retelling of the story with us as well. So log in or sign up for a membership to listen to this intriguing second hour. Don't miss it. We're definitely going to talk more about the conspiracies surrounding the discoveries of the caves here underwood. Maybe first you can share with us a little bit in terms of how you found the caves, where you went and where they actually are. Is it one place? Is there multiple entrances here? Where did you go?
Well, the actual entrance to the caves is in the North Cliff. This is, like a ridge that slopes down towards the north, and it's probably about 500 metres to the west of the Great Pyramid. There are 3 tombs in that area, of which nothing has been written. I mean, what has been written, you could put on a postage stamp, quite literally.
Right.
The only things is that an American Egyptologist by the name of George Reisner, who was investigating many areas of the plateau from, I can't remember, I think he originally, certainly for at least 20 years, eventually got to that part of the plateau, and whether he or one of his team, noted these tombs, that they drew rough plans of them, and they designated them North Cliff NC1, NC2, NC3. Now the tomb that we're talking about is NC2, but that's it. Nothing was written about it. And what's so crucial is that they don't show the caves at all. Whoever it was that went in there and did a rough plan of the tomb missed, or certainly never investigated, the caves themselves. There's no evidence that they got into the caves. Okay. Which is fortunate, because obviously this was the only other possibility that somebody would actually have recorded that they existed, and they were missed somehow. And this was in 1939/1940, at the very point of the break, in the beginning of the Second World War. And what happened was that Reisner, eventually had to drop tools and leave Egypt, realising that, that he couldn't really stay around any longer. And what's so interesting is that he'd actually pinpointed the tomb NC2, which, by the way, we call the Tomb of the Birds. Yes. The reason why we obviously call it Tomb of the Birds is because of the bird mummy fragments that were found there during the 1800s. So it just was a better name, and we didn't have this term NC2, and that's not even found in the book. It was only after my book was published that they actually discovered that Reisner had been there. And by the way, none of that is published anywhere. It's not in any standard book that you will find about the plateau and its tombs. I mean, there are standard reference books on the tombs of Giza, and it is not in those books.
And this has been, I guess, then also held away. The information about these natural caves and caverns and passageways and etc. has been held away from Hawass. Is that the story? What is going on here right now?
Well, what happened was that, I mean, as soon as we found them, we realised that this was going to be like a double-edged sword, because, we found something amazing here. I mean, incredible, and so close to the Great Pyramid that had been missed by every archaeologist. But we couldn't keep this to ourselves. Up to this point, we had done it off the record, so to speak. We had not done anything illegal. We'd not needed, special, excavation passes or anything. We'd done everything, above board. But clearly, now we'd discovered them, now we'd explored them, now we would have to tell the authorities. I mean, this was the only way forward, for 2 reasons. Because there was a very delicate ecosystem in here, a very dangerous one, but a delicate ecosystem of bats and spiders and God knows what other bugs down there, and animals. The whole place is strewn with the skulls and bones of animals as well. In fact, these were mentioned by Henry Salt in his account, that the place was strewn with animal bones. Now, what sort of bones these are, they could be some of them camel, maybe carcasses were pulled in there by hyenas and jackals and things like this. There may be other types of animal bones in there as well. So there was the delicate ecosystem that needed preserving, plus there was clearly untouched archaeology down there. Nobody had ever done any work down here. There were fragments of mummies, and it was clear that if once knowledge of these caves became public, other people would try and get down there. And as I say, at one point I picked up this small mummy fragment. I didn't know what it was. I just picked it up. When I saw what it was, I put it straight back down. And that was it. And that was the total of my interference or contamination of this place, other than us, walking through there and trying to get as far as we could. But what I knew is that others would come after us that would not be so scrupulous. And they could do all sorts of things down there. They could plant crystals, they could do this, whatever. And that would contaminate any excavation work that might go on there in the future. So I had to tell the leading Egyptologist, Dr. Zoe Hawass, the Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, the body that governs excavations and archaeological sites in Egypt. I had to tell him this. So initially, my friend and colleague John Van Alken, who is the director of the Edgar Casey Foundation, he was a good friend of Zoe Hawass, or still is. He went over and showed Hawass photographs of it. He gave him a copy of a report, this was a good, solid report on the discovery of the caves. And he said, I know nothing about this. Thank you for bringing it to my notice. That's what he said. This was in October 2008, so a few months after we'd actually found it. Then that was that. Then it went quiet. Then the following April, myself and my wife Sue went back to Egypt, and we arranged to meet Dr. Hawass at his offices in Cairo. And he now took a completely different stance. Now he claimed that he knew all about them, and that the tomb had always been known about. But I questioned him, and it became clear that he didn't know about the caves. I said to him, we're not talking just about a tomb here that's constructed. I said, there are natural caves that go into the rock for hundreds of metres. And as he tried to parry what I was saying, I could see it in his eyes that he didn't know what we were talking about. I could see it. And I came out of there and I said to my wife, I said, he doesn't know anything about the caves, does he? And that was that. Now, that was in April 2009. This was a big story, and it was obvious that it was going to break some time. And this happened in July 2009. And suddenly, the story spread like wildfire around the internet. A cave complex found at Giza. And this forced Zoe Hawass to come out and make an official public statement about the caves. And this went like this: they don't exist. Andrew Collins' caves are a figment of his imagination. He simply went into the tomb, thought it was bigger than what it actually was, and got confused in there. That was the official statement. But what I didn't know until months afterwards is that almost instantly he ordered a team into the tomb to clear every part of it, and in doing so uncovered underground galleries that extend deeply into the bedrock. I mean, made by humans. This is not natural. And separate, I must add, separate to the caves themselves. That we knew existed from the work of Howard Weiss and John Perring from the mid-1800s, because they did a rough plan of the tomb that did show quite complex chambers and galleries, which we never came across. And at first we thought maybe they're showing the caves, but it was so different that we realised that they were recording something else here. So we always suspected that there were deeper parts of the tomb. So Hawass was able to clear these underground galleries, but still no mention of the caves at all. And, it's almost as if there were a blind spot. And up to this point, I don't even think that Hawass himself had been in to look for the caves. He just relied on sending people in there and saying, come back, tell me what you discover, and we'll work on what to do afterwards.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I think even they missed the entrance into the caves.
Really?
Because it's clear that in the public statements that Hawass made, which were not only on his website, but also to me, and I'm a journalist, so if someone like Zoe Hawass makes a statement to me, I see that as publishable. And, he made it clear that he still thought that there were no caves. He told me that they were excavating eventually. Once I realised that he was, I asked him, and he confirmed it. And he said that they had geologists, they had surveyors, they had archaeologists working here now, trying to record the whole thing. So this was a big do, big. And but again, no mention of the caves, and there has been no mention whatsoever until, and I won't even go into this in detail because I don't know the full facts, but I suspect there is a possibility that they may feature in an upcoming TV series all about Hawass and his life, his discoveries, which is called Chasing Mummies, which airs on History Channel in the United States on the 14th of July. When it will be broadcast in Europe, I have absolutely no idea as yet. And there are whispers that I should watch this. And I mean, the only thing I can take from this is that we know that that this series follows him around Egypt over the last year, and we know that he was working in the Tomb of the Birds certainly from August through to the end of 2009. When I say he, I mean a team was, and he would occasionally probably turn up.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I could be wrong though. So your listeners don't watch it purely for this reason, but just keep an eye out for it and press record when it comes on.
Right, and what you're saying, I guess as well here, Andrew, is that we might end up in a situation where they take the credit, so to speak, for this as well in that sense, because
of course.
and because he's denied the story of Henry Salt, I think, as well previously, hasn't he? He's like, that's all rubbish. You forget about that. Yeah.
Well, to be honest, this was always going to happen. From the very moment we discovered them, we knew that eventually that discovery would be taken away from us, because I am not a bona fide scholar or academic. Never could Hawass and Egypt have such discoveries made by an amateur. It just could not happen. And although I have a book which I've written that records every step of the way, and obviously the whole world outside of Egypt and Egyptology know that it was myself, Nigel Skinner-Simpson, in the company of my wife Sue, that were the first people that discovered it and entered them. Unfortunately, that's not what the history books will say, and we've always known that will be the case. If the caves are featured in this TV series, which is very typical Hawass style, of course, everything being revealed, live. Here we are, revealing this for the first time on a Nat Geo or History Channel, exclusive. Is that he will go in there and you won't get any mention of it, but look, we have discovered caves.
Yeah.
And that will be it.
That will be it. And but I mean, the Discovery Channel picked up a piece on on this back in August last year, and at least wrote about it, and
That's right.
and you were in there, and MSNBC picked it up as well,
That's
the same
correct.
article.
Yeah.
So it's out there, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and I mean, obviously, all your listeners know the true story,
Right.
but that's not the way that the history books are going to be written. You know, in the same way that at the moment, you know, Hawass is completely rewriting the history books relating to Tutankhamun and his relationship to Akhenaten. You know, there's been a TV series about this that's been shown around the world. You know, you have all these official reports that tell you that Tutankhamun is now known to be the son of Akhenaten. Akhenaten's body was found in Tomb 55 in the Valley of the Kings, a mysterious tomb, and that everything has all been discovered. Well, that's not what the Egyptologists that I am in touch with say. They dispute much of what Hawass is claiming, but he's rewriting history, and he's in a position to rewrite history.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. The victors always write the history.
That's right. Very unfortunate. But again, there's a subcurrent here, and with the spreading of the word, obviously, people will know what actually has been going on there. I mean, if we also talk about what is happening there, what you know is happening there right now, have they?
Yeah.
Because the photos that you have up on your website now, of course, of the I'm looking at my notes here again now. The tombs of the birds, that has obviously that's shut off, but maybe that was.
Right, okay.
Like that to
But
begin with, right?
But this is all part of the growing conspiracy that's now rising.
Okay.
Because the discovery of the caves has generated a lot of interest in New Age people trying to outdo our discovery now. You know, people that believe that you know, it's their birthright to, you know, discover the Hall of Records and whatever. There is a lot of feverish activity going on at Giza of people making all sorts of claims, which are tantamount to, you know, conspiracy theories about what's going on. Well, the truth of the matter is that, yes, Hawass and his team have now sealed off the entrance to the Tomb of the Birds. I show pictures of this on my website. But it's not just a gate that's been placed on it. It's a gate which is currently cemented into place, which means that at this point in time, no one will be going back into those caves. There is a possibility that this cementing of the gate is only temporary, and that eventually, you know, the gate will swing and it will be locked, and that you know, the further work will continue there. That's a fact. If we switch away from this side of the plateau, which is, as I said, hundreds of metres west of the Great Pyramid, but still very close to the action, to the opposite side of the Great Pyramid, to the area, obviously, of the Sphinx, a lot of activity has been going on in this area recently. And this was broken in this way. A video was shown online on YouTube and other places, claiming to show secret excavations taking place at night where priceless treasures, including Atlantean artifacts, were being removed from a newly uncovered shaft immediately to the east of the temple of huge megalithic cyclopean blocks known as the Valley Temple of Khafre. But this video, which was several minutes in length, just showed darkness and something going on in the middle of the night, which you couldn't actually make out what the hell it was.
Very difficult to see there, yeah.
And I'm afraid that, you know, because of this video, whoever took it was now being threatened. Their life was being threatened, and, you know, they were now, you know, in hiding and the rest of it. And you think, well, why? I mean, it doesn't actually show anything.
No, exactly.
But this began it, and then just within a week, still pictures were published again on YouTube and other places online with very dramatic music saying this is the evidence of the conspiracy, and showing excavation work going on to the east of the Valley Temple. And sure enough, yes, it did seem as if that some kind of work was going on. And I was trying to keep up with this and doing articles at each stage which appear on andrewcollins.com, because people, when this happened, they come to me, they think, and I'm happy to accept that they consider that I am a sensible voice when this type of stuff is released. That they look to me and say, well, look, Andy, what really is going on here?
Right.
So, I look into it. I do know people that live in the village next to the plateau at Giza, which is Nazareth Al Salman. I also have contacts in America who also have friends out there, and others as well that have contacted me even since all this has happened. So I know people there. I can ask them what is going on, and if they don't know, they will investigate and they will find out and they will come back to me. And the truth of the matter is a lot more simple. A large shaft has been uncovered. It's about 100 to 120 feet deep. So what's that? I don't know, about 40 metres, something like that, if I've done my calculations right. It is in a style that was popular during a period of Egyptian history known as the Sayat period. Now, this was the 26th dynasty, when there was a huge revival of interest in the Giza Plateau, and cults existed in the names of Khufu, Khafre and Menkaure, the builders of the pyramids themselves. There was also a revival in the cults of Osiris and Isis and Horus. So there was a lot of activity going on in the plateau at this time, and quite obviously a lot of high-ranking officials, probably even royalty, decided that they would actually be buried close to these great kings of the past. So you'll find that there are a number of deep shafts that have been sunk into the bedrock in the area of the Sphinx, and obviously here to the east of the Valley Temple. And they have a style, and basically they're vertical shafts. I haven't got the exact dimensions of how wide it is, I'm afraid, at this time, but it looks to be, I don't know, maybe about a couple of metres across, although, that's not for certain. And they would descend vertically, and eventually they would bottom out into a burial chamber. And in here, obviously, would probably be a sarcophagus, and the coffin within that, and the burial, and there would have been grave goods, and that would be it. Really, the whole thing would be sealed, probably filled in completely, and that's that. And that almost certainly is what has been uncovered. And yet, I see stories online, that claim that an Atlantean crystal was seen being removed from this shaft.
Sure.
And I mean, I'd love that to be the case, but I must put my hand on my heart and say there is no evidence of this.
Need more than rumours here,
These are rumours, and I mean, I understand that more revelations are to come soon, and when I hear these, I will check them out. And you can be assured that I will do an article, and it will be on andrewcollins.com. I'll link it onto my Facebook page, and people can read the truth of the matter. I make sure that all of these features and articles are seen by my good friend Nigel Skinner-Simpson, who tempers my work, because I tend to get carried away in what I write, and he says, no, I don't think you should say that. That's pure speculation. That's hard fact, whatever. And I listen to him, and because of which there isn't a lot of speculation in what I'm saying about this. I give the specific fact of what is known at this time.
Yeah.
And if I go beyond that, I say, maybe it is possible that. And take it from there. I mean, another rumour was that this shaft linked to underground caves that were linked to the whole complex.
Right, yes.
So again, this is rumour. There's absolutely nothing coming out of the area suggesting that this is the case. This is a rumour. And then you have another story that's existed now for almost a year, relating to the village of Nazlet El Saman. And this was the fact that several people were killed when a shaft that they were digging, looking for illegal artifacts, collapsed in on them, killing all of them. And the authorities suddenly descended on the site. It was a building just to the northeast of the Sphinx, just beyond the great metal and concrete fence that they've erected around the plateau now. And that once again, gold objects, all sorts of stuff had allegedly been found and taken away, coffins and that. But then two phone videos surfaced, allegedly of what was down there. I looked at them and realised immediately that these were hoaxes.
Yeah.
What was being shown was probably a genuine hewn rock chamber. Maybe it was beneath this house. I mean, who knows? But the paintings were clearly some modern idea of what ancient Egyptian funerary imagery should look like. It was atrocious. It was really bad, really obvious.
Yeah.
The hieroglyphs meant nothing. The statues were quite clearly fakes in there. And you ask, why was this created? Well, the answer to that is the black market. There is a massive black market in the sale of genuine and modern artifacts that are being posed as genuine antiquities. This is something which goes on all of the time, probably in every village in Egypt, I'm afraid to say. And it goes on at Nazlet El Saman. It was obviously, there was a huge racket in process, and when this sad death as it was, because this was real. I found out about this within 24 hours of the event. I got a contact with the CNN in Cairo to check out the story, and he actually spoke directly to Zoe Hawass, who confirmed it immediately. Said yes, this is correct. The whole story was confirmed by Hawass almost immediately via a contact I had with CNN. And it's a very tragic story, of course, but it was in the name of this thriving black market. Now, the reason I talk about this is that these phone videos were posted online as if they were real and genuine by people that knew that they were hoaxes, claiming this is what was going on down there. This is just a sample of greater mysteries that we will reveal to you relating to what's happening at Giza. And this is fueling a conspiracy which doesn't exist there at the moment. And we're going back now to the 1990s, at a time when, through various developments and discoveries at Giza, similar conspiracies began to fuel. For instance, in the wake of the redating of the Sphinx by John Anthony West and Robert Schoch, the discovery of the door with the hinges inside the air shaft of the Queen's chamber in the Great Pyramid.
Right. The Gantenbrink's door and all this, right?
Obviously, the Orion mystery of Robert Bouvet. All of these things were generating undue interest or an accelerated interest in Giza, and people wanted more, and they wanted it now.
Yeah.
And so people started finding, or they started assuming that things were going on and everything was being covered up. And this was a rumour mill that ran all the way through to the millennium, right the way through to the idea that a capstone was going to be placed by a helicopter on the top of the Great Pyramid under the instructions of Dr. Hawass. There was going to be hundreds of Masonic dignitaries, in a huge millennial celebration. And of course, we know that didn't happen.
Never happened, no.
And one of the reasons it never happened is because the story, whether it was real or not in the first place, was brought to the attention of the media by Robert Bouval in the promotion of his book Secret Chamber in 1999. And that probably is what stopped that cap being put on. For better or for worse, that's what actually stopped it happening.
Okay.
And of course, after the millennium, there was a drop in interest in the ancient mysteries for a few years, and people forgot about it. But what's happening now is that 10 years later, the whole thing is starting again. The very same thing is occurring. Because the caves were discovered in 2008, it's generated thousands and thousands of posts on forums and blogs and threads online where people want to know more. And when the more is not forthcoming, people are filling in the missing gaps. And this is what's happening now.
I'm also, in one way, what I'm also seeing here, as you talk about this, because I obviously was alerted to this story as well, stories in connection with these excavations, illegal excavations, explosions in the underground were heard, etc., various things here. But what I'm thinking about is that could this be the noise now that is created in one way to cover up your story? That this is bunk and rubbish that are being thrown out there to kind of focus away from the fact that you've discovered these real caves out there, but now all these other rumors are beginning to spread, and those who are actually interested will dig a little bit into these the first initial, the noise, the disinfo that is out there, and discover it's actually nothing behind it, let it go, and then your story is kind of is forgotten along with that, if you know what I mean.
I don't think so. It doesn't feel right. I mean, going back to what you said about this noise, this supposed explosion, one person heard that. It was not confirmed by any other member of the local community. So it wasn't an explosion. It was a loud noise at night at a time when they were frantically erecting the scaffolding and stands and other structures for a Red Bull TMX race, not DMX, I understand it's TMX, whatever that means. And they were working day and night to do this on the plateau. This is one of the reasons why there was a lot of activity of trucks and things like that going on. And this was occurring right next to where these new excavations were taking place. Coincidentally, and I mean, people have said, well, hold on, wasn't one trying to cover the other? I can't see it. I mean, I don't think you can make that leap to assume that there's a conspiracy just simply because somebody hears a bang in the middle of the night.
Right.
It could easily have been a large piece of scaffolding falling and just hitting the ground.
Sure.
It could easily have been that. Nobody else confirmed this. And of course, what starts as a loud bang, by virtue of simply what you've just said there, becomes an explosion. It never started as an explosion. It started as a loud bang was heard in the middle of the night. So, you know, that's how the rumours, you know, build and build into something that they aren't. But as far as the caves are concerned, I mean, presumably Dr. Hawass is trying to do everything bona fide, official, in the same way that he is excavating this shaft by the Valley Temple officially. This was announced on television, which is very typical of Hawass. Obviously, the first place he tells anyone what's going on is on television. But this was announced in March on Egyptian television. So, you know, this is not secret excavations here. The whole public, the whole of Egypt were, you know, or could have been aware of this fact. And since that time, you know, other things have been written officially about this and whatever, and about the fact that the air shafts are now being re-explored inside the Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. This was another conspiracy that suddenly came out. Oh, this is all being done, you know, without any kind of official permission. It's being done in the middle of the night, whatever. Well, it's not. because firstly, he also announced that. This was officially announced. And there's now a very large blog by him on the official Zahi Hawass website explaining, all the different teams involved, this international team, what they're trying to achieve, etc., etc. And this idea about working at night, I think it's important to emphasise that one of the reasons why you work at night out there is because it's cooler. There are no tourists around,
Exactly.
so that no accidents can take place.
That's right.
And also, you also don't get a lot of stories generating, in theory, because nobody can see what's going on. I mean, I know, for instance, that the American Egyptologist Mark Lerner does most of his work at night when on the plateau, simply so they don't get disturbed.
That's right. So it's very, you can explain it very, very simply, obviously.
Yeah, but I don't want to put a downer on all of this, because, there are genuine great mysteries here to be uncovered at Giza.
I agree.
I mean, I have two sides of me. One is my sort of logical side of the brain, which works with hard facts. Then there's the other side of my brain, the creative, the artistic, the psychic side, that wants to believe, about crystals and, what might be below the plateau. And I think that's fine. I have no problems with that. And if you speak to a lot of Egyptologists off the record, they also believe there's something to be found, beneath the plateau at Giza. They've all got their own spin on it, their own idea. But, it's like a holy grail, isn't it? Maybe you'll never actually find what's actually down there, but it's the quest that's important.
That's right.
And that quest itself will uncover so much along the way that it will make it all worthwhile.
That's right. And I like that approach as well. We shouldn't forget the magical and the wondrous, obviously, but you can't go too far in the sensationalistic realm just because it seems mysterious or what have you. There needs to be that balance in between there, and I agree with you in that sense. It feels like people are taking these rumors and kind of running with it far too early without looking into it more and staying more calm and relaxed and laid back and, okay, let's look at it. It's interesting. It is what it is, but let's not, jump to conclusions just yet, because, again, nothing has come out of this consequently afterwards. As far as I've heard, nothing more has happened on the story, right?
No, that's right.
Yeah.
We are promised more revelations, though. I know that for a fact. Right. But when these will be released, I'm not sure. But be assured, your listeners, can find the facts of the matter probably within a few days of them being released on andrewcollins.com. And as I said, if people want to keep up with this whole debate, on Facebook, find me via andrewcollins.com. It's just a clickable link there. And, if people see anything that they think might be of interest, by all means contact me. I'm happy for them to do that.
That's excellent, Andrew. And what can you say more here then in terms of the caves and what is next for you? You've documented and detailed a lot of this stuff, obviously, in Beneath the Pyramids in your latest book, but also what is happening right now. As far as you've heard, it's been shut in some way. Will this turn out, do you think, to be another kind of Ganten Brink's door thing, but nothing happens ever? It seems like it's just swept under the rug until interest is lost, and that's it. Or will you continue to push to actually go in there and do proper excavate or looking around or finding out?
Well, I have to be realistic. Firstly, they are sealed now, the cave entrance. So, I mean, there is no way that I or anybody else are going to be able to get in there in the foreseeable future. But what we're looking forward to is Dr. Hawass's official report on their excavations inside the Tomb of the Birds. This will tell us just how much he knows or how much he's willing to reveal. If that report, when it is published, and I mean this could take 5 years, bear that in mind, when finally it comes out, and I mean this is aside from any possible TV shows that might feature the caves, then we'll know exactly what he wants the public to be aware of relating to them. If he still continues to deny that those caves exist, then I'll start jumping up and down again, doing press releases, stories online saying, look, he's deliberately either missed or ignoring these caves, which are clearly not part of the areas that he's investigated in these caves, these underground galleries, which he seems to definitely have been focusing upon. Because the caves are entered by completely separate parts of the tomb, away from the entrances to these underground galleries which were uncovered, and they actually led to staircases that went down into galleries that extend massively. I mean, huge, wide, but these are made by human hands and they're completely different in style. They were probably used as a bird necropolis in honour of some local god. Now, what type of birds is a mystery. Nothing is recorded from the 19th century when Weiss and Perrin went in there of what type of bird mummies were being found. This will be crucial. All it says, and there's one specific description in a diary report, and otherwise it's more generally just said bird mummies, is that it said a bird mummy was today removed, a large bird mummy. Now, for it to be a large bird suggests that it might not simply be a hawk or a falcon, which would be an obvious totem or symbol of the god Sokar, who was the guardian of the cave underworld in Egyptian myth, or even Horus, you could say Horus. If it's a larger bird, it's maybe an ibis, and if it's an ibis, if it's a cult to do with an ibis, that's really, really interesting, because the ibis was the symbol of the god Thoth, and obviously his Greek form, Hermes or Hermes Trismegistus. And of course, he was said to be the guardian of the Hall of Records. And of course, his tomb was said to be beneath the second pyramid, where the caves almost certainly go off towards. So, in other words, there may have been a cult entrance into the caves, honouring Thoth or Hermes in this way by putting these bird mummies there. So, it will be crucial if Hawass and his team have found any more bird mummies, what type of bird they are. That will give us a lot more information about what cult would have been associated with that area. Not initially, because bird cults in Egypt were quite late, in the so-called late dynastic period, through to Roman times, so from about 500 BC. Now, it will be important to understand what birds were actually mummified and contained within the tomb and the underground galleries. Now, from some of the photographs that have been taken in the caves, and this is another point to emphasise, that of course we're dealing with absolute darkness here. Even torches barely penetrate very far in the dark within them. In other words, it's difficult to make out where you're going and what you're doing under any normal light, torchlights, whatever. Flash photography records far more, because you can be left with hundreds of photographs and you can study each one and you can say, what's this? Could that possibly be an image on the walls? Is this a possible artifact on the ground? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some of those pictures do suggest that there are untouched bird mummies actually contained within niches. You can actually see them. They're almost like womb-like, belly-like. And this was a style that was also used at Saqqara, just about 10-15 miles south of Giza, in the underground catacombs there. Now, those are man-made. Those were hewn by human hands. What we've got here at Giza, obviously, is a natural cave system, a tomb connected with it, and the tomb has been extended to create underground galleries. That's how it is.
That's the way it is.
Yeah, and by the way, if this sounds complicated to people, there's an article on andrewcollins.com that has plans of ourselves, other people that have been in the underground galleries, against Weiss and Perrin's own plan from which dates to about 1837, I think, or 1839. So it's all there. You can see the layout, you can see where we are, you can see where the caves extend from actually inside the tomb. So it's all made clear there.
Fantastic. And again then, do you think that this is the underground system that potentially is holding or harboring some of the knowledge, as it were, from the ancient world? When you, for instance, when you mentioned El Hanash before, that giant snake, for some reason also my mind is drawn towards the fact that, this is obviously a story that is put out there to scare people away who might be superstitious or what have you, to keep them away from this area, because it actually potentially is something down there in there. What do you think, Andrew?
I think both, really. I think that firstly, El Hanash is the memory of some kind of very ancient lore that goes back, arguably, 10,000, 12,000 years, to do with some kind of creator god in the form of a serpent.
Right.
And by the way, there is snake simulacra down there. There is at least one head, a natural forming in the rock down there of a snake's head. And this is one of the oldest symbols of religion in Egypt. Snake simulacra, nature forming it, a snake's head out of natural rock. For instance, in the Kalahari, there is a rock cave shelter with a similar snake's head there that's been venerated for 70,000 years.
Yeah, that's right. Amazing.
And also in southern Egypt, on the borders with Sudan, there is a holy hill. The name has slipped my mind just at the moment, but where there is a shrine to Hathor, which is like a womb or a cave-like again. Mm-hmm. And there is a pillar of rock by the side of it, which is natural, that has a shape at the top that looks like a snake's head. And this is actually depicted in a relief inside one of the temples there, and was revered as a representation of a cobra or some kind of primeval serpent. Mm-hmm. And Hathor herself is very strongly associated with the primeval serpent. That's one of her forms. So, you've got this cult of the serpent actually within the caves. That's very powerful, very strong. We felt it down there. And one of the only other people that we know has actually been down the caves. They felt this strong serpentine link down there, which, is there now because you know it's associated with snakes, but you just look around the place and it does have that feeling of almost being inside the body of a snake. So, you feel that presence down there. But yes, it is a legend to both preserve knowledge relating to what's down there, and you're right, to keep people away as well.
Yeah. I'm also reminded, because you write about this in the Duat text, about the fifth hour of the Duat, and Sokar, this deity that you mentioned here, which seems to be some kind of Osiris-type figure as well.
Yeah.
He rides on a snake in the underworld as well.
That's right, and it's almost certainly what became El Hanash. Absolutely,
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, it's the same type of idea as St. George killing the dragon, or St. Michael killing, the devil in the form of a dragon or something. It's control over primeval energies.
And the dragon is obviously the guardian of the treasure always in myth.
And the guardian of the place, the guardian of the caves. In ancient Egyptian myth, snakes were obvious symbols representing caves and holes in the ground. They were also symbols of the god Geb, who was the earth god. And obviously, structurally, he presided over caves and structures like this because he was god of the earth. and the caves were in the earth, and snakes live in the earth, so that the snake became his symbol as well. So, you know, all of these things are elements of a very, very ancient picture, which is now beginning to emerge. And I think that it's a little naive to some degrees if you only concentrate on one area and try and get your interpretations from that, whether it be the Anduat text, the Books of the Dead, the Edfu texts, the Edgar Casey readings, you know, Arab, Egyptian, local legends. All of these have got to be brought together, and you've got to look for patterns and pictures emerging. And this is telling us that Giza was a sacred place connected with some kind of cave underworld associated with a serpent, a primeval serpent that was thought of as creating the world, and that this almost certainly goes back before the end of the last ice age, and that was venerated at this time. The caves themselves almost certainly permeate the whole of the plateau. We have two possible entrances at the moment, the Tomb of the Birds, and at the other end of the plateau, the well beneath Jebel Gibli. This not only has been rumoured to be an entrance, but I have actually spoken to somebody that was lowered down there and can confirm that there was and is horizontal passages that go off from it deep down. Yeah. This was actually investigated when the waters were extremely low. So we know that this possibly does link with caves, and our work will continue relating to the case, but more from a research point of view for the time being. But I live in hope that we will get back in there sometime. Yeah. How it will happen, I don't know, but both Nigel, myself, and obviously my wife Sue, you know, we all feel that this is not over, that we will be back in there someday. But we also will be looking for other entrances, because if there are two, there are going to be more, and it's those that we're after now. Yeah, well, exactly. They would have to cover up the whole freaking area down there. If it is, as you said before, Andrew, like a Swiss cheese, then that's going to be impossible for them to cover the whole thing up there. Exactly. So in terms of the ARE, how's things going there? Are you in contact with them? Are they interested in helping I am, yes. I mean, I gave keynote lectures at the Ancient Mysteries conference for the ARE in Virginia Beach for about 2 or 3 years running. This will be the first year that I won't be talking, and in my place is Dr. Hawaf. Nice. He is the keynote speaker this year in October in Virginia Beach at the ARE's Ancient Mysteries conference. And if any of your listeners are going, would they please take a tape recorder and send me a recording? And can I also ask you, if you are going to that conference, to please ask him about the caves, and try and get some answers out of him. I mean, I think he realises that he will be asked, and it would not surprise me if he has already prepared some part of his lecture that will cover them. I mean, clearly he's not going to give too much ground, but he's going to have to please the audience that he's talking to at that time. So that's it, really. So, I mean, I will be back with them, you know, in future years, and I certainly will be working with them again. Excellent. AndrewCollins.com is the website. Get the full story, obviously, of what we have been talking about here today, and get a copy of Andrew's new book, Beneath the Pyramids. And Andrew, we'd love to have you back again soon, though, both for an update on this, but also in terms of some of the other things that we didn't have time to talk about. The Cygnus and the Giza correlation, for instance, is a biggie here, obviously, and this dovetails with your previous book, The Cygnus Mystery, which is also a fascinating read, you know. It's a subject of its own, but I'm happy to come back whenever. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your time. We really enjoyed having you, so thanks again. My pleasure.
That's our program with Andrew Collins. We'll keep an eye on what's going on at Giza and revisit this topic again as more developments occur. For Fredrik, Lana, Elizabeth, and myself, thank you for listening. Full schedule of upcoming guests and topics available in our radio archive and member section. We'll be back with more radio in just a few days. I hope you join us then again. Stay inquisitive and take good care, and we will talk more soon. All the best.